They should remake Back to the Future 2, where there are no flying cars, and people just stare at their phones all the time, getting offended at everything. But if they'd put that in the movie, no one in the 80s would have ever believed that that would have been remotely possible. Now, that's just one of the reasons that so many of us would love to go back to the 80s. Hey Dad, can I use the lawnmower to make some extra money? You sure can, son. I bet everyone here thought this was going in a different direction. But this is how today's generation thinks. It's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are? How to tell where the Gen X kids are hanging out. 1984. 2044. I don't like this. I don't like this one bit. You might take one of these and put one of those one-wheel boards under it.
Here's Johnny.
George Lucas, before CGI, 1984. How many of you guys remember the Kraft Squeeze-A-Snack, which is basically cheese in a roll with a little cap on it that you'd open and squeeze the cheese through? This came long before the Kraft Easy Cheese that we have today, which is basically cheese in a can. And I'm sure both of them were just as awful for you. It's 1985. You just bought this. What's the first song you play in it as you drive off? I Can't Drive 55. I forgot that I was once brave enough to do this. Yeah, that is true. Doctor, are you feeling any pain? Me, only the normal amount of pain. Doctor, the normal amount is 0. Me. Who knows what movie this is from? Punch some letters and leave your answer in the comments. Gen X, why does no one acknowledge us? AARP, hey girl, what's up? This is just wrong. I might not have much money, but I can build it, fix it, grow it, catch it, or hunt it. Therefore, I am rich. This is something that, in my opinion, has been mostly lost to the younger generation. Even on just the fix it part. Most people today don't even know how to do proper maintenance on their vehicle, let alone if anything goes wrong in their house, like plumbing or electrical. They have to call a quote-unquote professional for all of those things. And most often, even these so-called professionals either don't know how to do the job or just don't care. Dad, let me take a picture that will make your mom angry. 1970. This was still true even up through the 80s and into the 90s. After that, it pretty much became a crime to even take this photo. You can only save one of these John Hughes classics. The others are gone forever. Well, it would immediately be down to Ferris Bueller's Day Off or The Breakfast Club. And I think I'd have to pick Ferris Bueller's Day Off. What's your guys' choice? This was a snack when I was growing up. Yeah, you could just pick them off the vine. Generation X goals. Own a house large enough that my body is found in the conservatory, with my maid standing over it holding a candlestick. How many of you guys remember, or even knew about, this spin-off from the Dukes of Hazzard? Still punk, I whisper as I reach for my pill organizer. I really wish that the last part wasn't true. Good luck coming for Gen X. Every last one of them can fight. They put them into training at age 2, handed them the keys to the couch. Handed them the keys to the house at age 4, and had them cooking by 7, and with neighborhood jobs at 9. Everyone over the age of 42 got some sort of story that starts with them fixing breakfast for school, with some wire light going down. They were escaping kidnappings and taking 5 subways solo at age 7. Like y'all, we soft. These people were built for survival. I'm just saying, if I had to pick a fight with a generation, I'm not fighting with the folks who are out here ironing their uniforms at age 5 and had 15 ways to get out of bloodstains so their mom didn't get mad at them for ruining their good clothes. They're the around and find out generation. I'm sure most of you guys here on the channel would agree with this. John Connor watching y'all make friends with AI. This is true. To get online back in the day, you either had to issue commands to the modem or get software to do it for you. Most of today's generation wouldn't understand what you mean by to get online. They'd think you're talking about how to connect to the Wi-Fi. If you start singing a certain song while looking at this, you qualify for a senior citizen discount. There will never be anything swaggier than Han Solo breaking into the literal Death Star, stealing some dude's armor, and then kicking his feet up like he owns the place. Legend. Before we had to wait for the computer to boot up, we had to wait for the TV to warm up. Dad, what was the 80s like? We had dudes dressed up like fruit trying to sell us underwear. They're not wrong. How many of you remember seeing these TV commercials? You thought you were gonna make it through Tuesday, didn't you? Yeah, so many lives lost. I love the main tagline here. How to talk your parents into partying with $1,300. They knew the real reason why we all wanted these, just to play games. But they also knew our parents would never go for that. So here, they were training the kids to become Apple salesmen. I'm gonna tell my kids, this is the original Fast and the Furious. Back to the Future predicted this. I've actually got some pretty bad examples of this in my Laugh While the World Burns series. How bad do things have to be for both of these to be in town? Probably pretty bad. Having to do research with an encyclopedia and missing the one volume you need. Or, when you only had half the set, because your parents were buying them a couple volumes at a time. You can probably smell this photo. This is true. Having a 40-hour family road trip with no entertainment options. We had entertainment options. We could do things like read a book. Because, when we were kids, we could read in a moving vehicle and not feel sick. You also had search word books, and you could play games on paper, like tic-tac-toe, hangman, other things. And you could also play games like I Spy. When you flip through your 80s yearbook, this is actually pretty accurate. You cannot beat 80s movies. The Pro Modem 1200. It's about time. Yeah, that's what we'd say when it finally connected to the internet. The batteries are low. Better turn off bass boost to conserve energy. I'd actually completely forgot about doing this until I saw this meme. But it is very true. When listening to music, I've actually caught myself turning the volume down on my phone, even though that would not conserve your phone battery at all, because it's only connected to the speaker by Bluetooth. And whether it's your car or your headphones, they have their own power source. The only thing that might conserve the battery on your phone a little tiny bit is turning off the Bluetooth. But then you can't listen to your music, so what good is that? The Sears Video Arcade Cartridge System will turn your TV set into a family game center. HDMI kids won't understand. This is actually a pretty good one in my opinion. How many of you guys at schools ever had pizza that looked like this? The pizza I always had growing up was just the square rectangles. But I vaguely remember one year that they had a different type. I don't think it was this, but it wasn't the regular square rectangles either. The perfect carpet doesn't exist. If I had a staircase in my house, I would love to have this. Before social media, this is how we knew where everyone was at. Yep, and you didn't have to post every moment of your life. You just had to live life. Gen Z, you don't understand how bad words hurt. Literally everyone born before 1995. After school in the 80s. How many of you all heard this? Don't sit too close to the TV. You're gonna ruin your eyes. 40 years later. I just replaced my old burn barrel. It literally had burnt in half. I took his photo of my brand new one. This was its first burn. I was walking through the sporting goods section of Walmart and happened to see this. Looks like they brought the old style boxes back. Too bad they don't still have the power that they used to. Guys, why am I getting this popping up on my phone? This just ain't right, man. The 1980s, when grilled cheese sandwiches came in a box. I took this photo about a month ago. I was taking my dad to one of his doctor's appointments, and we happened to pass this in the hallway. And yes, it is still a functional payphone. I can't remember the last time I saw a payphone, let alone one that actually worked. Gen X. When someone decides to test my crazy, and they don't understand that I've made it an art form. I guess he's going to make sure that he can't miss. But he better hold on to the end of that stock really good, or he may not have to worry about having any more kids. Motocross bikes. 20-inch bike with chrome-bladed frame and color-coordinated plastic fenders. I don't remember any of my bikes having a chain guard. How many of you know what's under this cover? This is actually my dad's. I was up in the loft of my barn the other day and happened to come across it and thought I'd take a couple photos. If you think you know what it is, pause the video and drop your guess down in the comments. Is that your final answer? If you said it's a high-speed cassette tape duplicator, you would be correct. You'd put your original master tape on the left-hand side, you'd put your blank empty tape on the right-hand side, and you'd hit start. And in about 60 seconds, this thing would make a copy of your original tape and rewind it back to the beginning, ready to play. And you would think duplicating a cassette tape at that kind of speed would really degrade the quality. But actually, it didn't degrade at all. They sounded really great, as long as you used good tapes. Is the Bandit Forrest Gump's daddy? That's an interesting question. Kids these days will never know the struggle. You didn't have this problem with the Walkman cassette players, but when they moved to the CD players, it always seemed like your pocket just wasn't quite big enough. When I was a kid, there were no phones or tablets. We read cereal boxes at breakfast. Yeah, that, and they usually had some kind of little puzzle game. When you tell people that when you were a kid, you had a pet kitty cat. When you lose your train of thought mid-sentence. All too often. This was always the best way to ride. Life before streaming meant needing a membership to rent a movie. Also late fees. Pretty much everything about Blockbuster, actually. Yeah, I still had my Blockbuster membership card up until just a couple years ago. Not exactly sure what happened to it. My body after doing absolutely nothing. Unfortunately, some days. And you know the guy there on the right's Gen X, because he's only complaining about a sore neck when actually half of his shoulder is missing. My mother-in-law riding a bear at 2 years old. New Gen X members got inducted when they were really young. Back when soft drinks were advertised to give to babies. Yeah, because you wanted them bouncing off the walls all night from that pure liquid sugar. No more soggy cereal. I'd actually like to have this bowl. What I always do with my banana and cornflakes is put the cereal in a bowl and I put my milk in a cup. I tilt the bowl over to one side and just add a little milk at a time. That way my cornflakes never get soggy. The only actor to be killed by a Predator, Terminator, and Xenomorph. Remember these at the mall? I think everyone loved Orange Julius. That was someone said that they should put these in Gen X retirement centers. The biggest lie of my childhood. Pushing does nothing. Nope, never did. There are people alive today that have never known the joy of shopping for music at a cool music store. Life before Google Maps. You know, it's pretty bad these days that kids don't understand that GPS is a fairly new thing, and they can't comprehend how we could possibly use a paper map to know where we were going. The worst part is, they still make paper road maps. I just bought a Rand McNally U.S. Road Atlas last year, which has pretty good detail about all the roads in each state. Don't get me wrong, I like GPS. But if your phone dies, or if something happened that the phones or GPS just stopped working, most of the people today that was in the middle of a trip wouldn't know how to get to where they were going, or even how to get back where they came from. A man dual wielding raw steaks slaps diners in the face at vegan restaurant, yelling, "If you don't eat your meat, you can't have any pudding." If you know what he's quoting, punch a bunch of keys and drop your answers below. When I was a kid, this is how we made a playlist. I'm at the age where my mind firmly believes I'm 29. My humor suggests I'm 12, and my body possibly unalived in the Civil War. 1980. And 2024, we'll have flying cars. 2024. Do not eat this wrapper. You know what the worst part is? They had to put it on the wrapper for a reason. Some people call it the peel on a sandwich. If you've ever had your beat with one of these, then you're probably not a they-them. Yes, as more and more people stopped correcting their children, the faster society has declined. And at this point, it's not just in free fall, it's in a full-powered nosedive. Remember the feral kid in Mad Max? This is that kid now. Now that's just funny. Kids today. Mom, can I have my iPad back? Me as a kid. The mines are calling, and I must dig. You know, as Gen Xers, we always talk about how much tougher we were than these younger generations. And while that is true, a lot of you boomers and even silent generation guys that watch this channel know that your generations were even tougher. My dad was born in 41. When he was 7 years old, he helped my grandfather shoot dynamite in a little bitty coal mine that was on their farm. My grandfather was a fairly short man, but even he had to walk on his knees to get in this little 4-foot high tunnel where he mined this small vein of coal. He built a wooden cart that ran on wooden tracks. They'd shoot the dynamite at the end of the day and go back the next morning to be able to pick up the coal and put it in the cart. He'd take it and sell it just to get a few dollars. Just one of the many things that my grandfather did in order to feed the family and keep the farm going. When your parents would record the good movies from TV onto a videotape. How many of you guys actually called them VHS tapes? We never did. Everyone I knew just called them videotapes. Don't piss off the guy with the backhoe. You know this guy was Gen X. You can just feel the sarcasm. That is a pretty nice truck, though. My organs watching me take 800 milligrams of ibuprofen on an empty stomach and chase it with 2 energy drinks. I try not to take too much ibuprofen, but I take way too much Tylenol and Excedrin migraines. And yes, some days I basically do chase it with an energy drink. And that's just to be able to get out of bed in the morning. What's the first game that comes to mind? Tetris. What games you guys think of? Drop it down in the comments. Your pronoun is dumb. It's gender neutral. That is a perfect meme. I like how there's just one guy in Rolling Stones that dresses like a regular 77-year-old man. He looks like he just got back from Kmart. When you realize that 2024 is as far away from 1980 as 1936 was. Yeah, that's just not right. I hate math like this more and more every day. Gen Z, carried off the court with a leg cramp. Gen X, unalives on the bench, is revived and asked to be put back in the game. I can't believe how some people these days claim that LeBron would beat Michael Jordan. Jordan could beat him even today. Anyway, does any of you remember about this hockey player? He flatlined for a couple of minutes. They carried him out into a hallway and was able to revive him. I think the game got postponed because of it. I don't know if they ever said what actually caused it. Sears Wish Book for the 1980 holiday season. How many of you guys remember just sitting and looking through these big, thick catalogs for hours? How many of you guys know that these catalogs are actually a collector's item now? Some of them sell for ridiculous prices. When they put the carpet on the floors, the walls, and even the countertops. That way they never had to repaint. And it always used these kind of patterns because they'd hide almost all the stains and stuff. I'm so old school, my first game console had wood grain paneling. I showed a similar Atari back on, it was a past episode. And there was somebody in the comments claimed that the photo was fake, but there was never wood grain panel on an Atari. If you guys remember wood grain paneling on your Atari, drop it down in the comments. Kraft pineapple cheese spread. That's just wrong in so many ways. That's probably where pineapple on pizza started. Share this video if you remember this game. Back in my day, we didn't wear helmets. We'd just lie there unconscious until someone came to get us for dinner. It is my life. John Bovey. Again, how do people so carelessly get something put on their body that is so permanent? Yes, technically these days they can be removed, but it costs a whole lot more to have it taken off than it does to have it put on. This was the peak of humanity. It never got any better after this guy. We should have just stopped right there. Although this was in the 90s, this was a pretty good one. These things ended up being in stores everywhere. This thing was actually pretty funny. Your phone is connected to this sound system. What's the first song you're playing? Punch a bunch of keys in the correct order and drop your answers down in the comments. Noise ordinance enforced because modern music sucks. I agree with this for the most part, especially mainstream music. Just about the only new music that I listen to is some of the artists here on YouTube, as a lot of them actually make good songs, where a lot of mainstream music has went PC and woke. They should really bring Radio Shack back. I used to go there all the time. Sidewalk shoe skates or clamp-on skates. At one point, I had the clamp-on skate there in the middle, number 7. They looked exactly like that one. Who misses the 80s? You would listen to the radio all day long just to record your favorite song of all time on a tape. Yes, we did. What is burning CDs? I was there 3,000 years ago. Kids getting thrown off right and left. Total carnage. Wails of anguish. Not one adult gave a single about it. The chores and hard work we hated as kids made us who we are today. It's finally here, the underground bunker we've all been waiting for. The website I found this on was claiming that these bunkers were real and up for sale. However, just looking at these images here, unfortunately, I think this is just AI generated. Too bad, too. I'd love to have a good bunker. Not that I could afford it, though. 80s movies. How many have you seen? I didn't realize it, but I've only saw about 2/3 of these. I guess I got some catching up to do. I'm not a big movie buff, but there's a few of these I'd still like to see. How many of you guys seen? Who remembers taping the charts on a Sunday and trying to press pause before the DJ spoke? Yep, many times. And how many of you guys agree that the clear cassette tapes always sounded better than the white or black ones? Drop your thoughts in the comments. One day you're young, and the next day you're sleeping like this. I hate to admit it, but it's sad how true this is. Still a better love story than Twilight. No, I can't do Snapchat or TikTok, but I can write in cursive, do math without a calculator, and tell time on a clock with hands. How many of you guys back in the 80s and before would have thought things like this would now be considered special skills? Problems that were overblown. Quicksand. People offering me illegal substances. Getting lost in the Bermuda Triangle. Problems I was not sufficiently warned about. Arguing with robots about unexpected items in begging areas. Remembering all my passwords. Existential dread. The schools also never taught us things that was actually useful, like how to do your taxes. Christopher Reeve preparing for his role as Superman. I was really sad when he had his accident. Some of you guys might know more, but from what I heard, that horse threw him off once, and he got back on it anyway. And then when it threw him off the second time is when it broke his neck. How many of you guys knew that when Ghostbusters was released, that they actually set up a real 1-800 number where people could call Ghostbusters? I'll see if I can find that and put it in the next episode. Kids today will never understand the sheer joy and delight this apparatus caused. Yeah, these were our virtual reality goggles. I don't know what the heck this is, but I remember it. That's true. I do remember this. I believe one of the places I saw it was on the paper cups that you get for fountain drinks. But it seems like I saw this same design someplace else. The original Hunger Games. I remember playing Hungry Hippos at my cousin's house when I was a kid. Sometimes people are so oblivious. It's so cringy to see middle-aged men wearing Nirvana brand t-shirts, like they're trying to fit in with young people. Like, shouldn't you have your own style from your own era? Why don't you go look in the mirror? You're the one that's stealing from our generation's culture. I'm so old, when I was a kid, you actually had to win to get a trophy. Yeah, didn't have all these participation trophies. That's one of the reasons why most kids today, when they're thrown into real life, they expect everything to just be given to them. Happiness was getting the S power in Contra. How many of you guys remember these? You also had the Nike Air Pumps. The first time you watched Back to the Future. The 100th time you watched Back to the Future. Fact check true. Google Maps. Arrival time 8:42. Me outside at 8:25. Even though he's a good actor, I always thought that he was a really weird choice as casting him as a captain in Star Trek. What do you guys think? Shocking news from Skeletor. In only 6 years, the 80s will be... Yeah, we're just moving on. How many people remembers this ride? I was always amazed by the guys that run these rides, who would get out of their booth in the center and start walking around the walls while this thing was running. I always thought that this ride would be a great place to do workouts in. Kind of like a G-force chamber, so to speak. Alien is a movie where nobody listens to the smart woman, and then they all unalive except for the smart woman and her cat. 4 stars. Here's a reminder, have you guys taken all of your pills today? If not, pause the video and go get them now. Too bad all the pills that we have to take now don't taste as good as these did. I am this old. It's only a short trip. Enjoy it. This is very, very true. Like the scripture says, life is as short as a vapor of smoke. It's here 1 second, then it quickly fades away. Everyone forgets that before John Rambo and John Wick, we had John Winger, a real hero. If you know what movie this is from, drop it in the comments. They don't make them like they used to. See, Gen X had to head in the toilet long before Gen Alpha. Which I still haven't the slightest idea what all that's about. Smoking areas existed in public high schools back in the 80s. Students could smoke cigarettes in between classes in designated lounges. or just some area that we all kind of silently agreed on. At my school, there was one single lone tree down toward the end of the school. We'd all gather down there because when it started to get hotter weather, that was the only place that had any shade. The funny thing is that we still gathered there in the wintertime. First episode, November 4th, 1977. If you know who this is, you're on the right YouTube channel. Mom says you can have 2 before dinner. What do you pick? My choices might have been different back in the day, but right now I'd have to go with Jawbusters and Pop Rocks. What's your guys' choices? Them. What old person thing do you do? Me. Run errands early as heck before the idiots wake up. No matter how cool you are, you'll never be Magnum P.I. driving a Ferrari around Hawaii. Cool. Today's generation goes out at night and calls in sick to work the next day. Our generation went clubbing, got home at 5 a.m., slept for an hour, and showed up to work in the same clothes and a handstand. Roger Dorn and Wild Thing Ricky Vaughn reunited after 35 years. Why was there always a bite taken out of these? Anytime that I have seen these at somebody's house, it did always look like somebody took a bite out of them. Sometimes you want to go where everybody knows your name. If you know where it was that everybody knows your name, hit the right keys and drop your answer down in the comments. I still don't think parents realized how far we rode our bikes back in the day. Given enough time, you could ride a long way. You just always had to keep in mind that it's going to take you the same amount of time to get back. Or else you'd be pedaling really hard making a beeline for home. I just found out that Gen Z kids are calling the 90s the late 1900s, and I feel like I just drank from the wrong grail in Indiana Jones. I've seen a few examples of this now, and although they are technically correct, it's just so wrong. 29 years later, and still one of the best movie endings. This is true. That was, and still is, a great movie. Smurfberry Crunch was a popular cartoon-themed breakfast cereal that was beloved in the 80s. But anyone who actually ate it would know that it came with one pretty bizarre side effect. If you know what this side effect was, put a bunch of letters in the correct order and drop your answer below. Building the Death Star will create hundreds of thousands of jobs. You know, this might just be a meme, but in real life, this is exactly what they do when they keep pushing all these wars. How I stood outside my mom's room when I missed the bus. When you realize 1970 and 2024 are as far apart as 1970 and 1916. I'm gonna have to sit down for a minute. Yeah, time passes us by far too quickly. I don't know who made this, but it's actually pretty cool. Blowing into Nintendo cartridges. However, the rumor is false. Blowing into video game cartridges has no noticeable impact on games working correctly. Well, these fact checkers must be Gen Z, because all of us here know the truth, and we learned it by experience. Remember these? Yep, the original TV dinner. And these were the ones that you put in the oven instead of a microwave. They were usually pretty good. Admit it, you sang these numbers. I don't think that any of us can read these numbers without singing them in our head. We used to have a social network. It was called being outside. Kind of sad today that most kids hardly even touch grass anymore. Being in your 40s is crazy. Some of my friends are grandparents, and some friends have newborns. There are two types of people. Those who think Michael Keaton is the best Batman, and those who are wrong. I just called the Hall & Oates emergency hotline, and it still works. There is a hotline called Call & Oates that only plays Hall & Oates songs for you when you call at 719-266-2837. And yes, this is actually true, and it still works even today.
Want to Hall & Oates, your emergency Hall & Oates helpline. To hear one-on-one, please press 1. To hear Rich Girl, please press 2. To hear Manita, please press 3. To hear Privatize, please press 4.
I can't actually play the song because I'd get hit with a copyright. Actually, on the last Gen X episode I had, there was a meme about a TV commercial. And so I put part of the commercial in there. Now when I got the video done and uploaded it, I got hit with a copyright notice. So I had to turn around and go back and cut that section out and re-upload the video. Crazy to think they built a city on just these two things. Most everybody here on the channel will get this. They should put Prince on the $20 bill and call it 1999, the bill formerly known as a 20. Drive like it's the 80s. Hair up, phone down. This is why my generation grew up so sarcastic.
Ernie, tell me, how do I look?
With your eyes, Bert.
Remakes should be made for bad movies, not classics. I think all of us here on the channel can fully agree with this. More than 40 years later, and I still don't know the name of this candy. That's true. I have no idea what these were called. But they were wrapped like strawberries, and in my opinion, as far as candy is concerned, they taste like strawberries. Me debating if I'm gonna let it slide or start something. I think this is pretty accurate. I think most of us will let a lot of things slide, at least for a while, but eventually, it gets to a point you just have to put your foot down. It's a sad day on Sesame Street. Big Bird, $7.99. Convicted of murder, Christopher Robin. I will never recover from this student's email. Good afternoon, Professor. Hope you had a great break. I was wondering if it would be acceptable to use sources from the late 1900s for our final paper. I found an interesting paper from 1994. Is there a cutoff date of publication? See you tomorrow. Remember going through the phone book to order a pizza? How many of you guys had the number to your favorite pizza restaurant memorized? And by favorite pizza restaurant, I mean Pizza Hut. But he's your son. Bull, I bet he looks nothing like me. That is a pretty good explanation. My emotions speak louder than words. If I don't say it, my facial expressions will. This is true. I'm old enough to remember when ice cream came in a box. How about being old enough to remember when ice cream was always a full half-gallon?
Waiter, there's a fly in my soup. Could you do something about it?
There is a fly in your soup in this establishment?
Yeah.
I shall do something about it instantaneously, sir. Yes, sir, a fly in your soup.
Pizza Hut just arrived. You got Super Mario Bros. 3. You have permission to stay up late and there's no school tomorrow. You're 48 years old and it's 2024. Kids these days with their fancy Fortnite skins will never know the joy of seeing Mario inexplicably dressed like a freaking flying raccoon for the first time. Yeah, I never did quite understand that. How did they come up with the idea that putting a raccoon tail and ears on him made him able to fly? Parents become grandparents and lose all their senses. All of a sudden, they got McDonald's money now. This game was at every single restaurant dining table, and only a true Gen X mastermind could figure this out. This is true. I remember playing this game at restaurants when I was a kid, while we waited for our food to arrive. Once you get it figured out, it's actually pretty easy. I agree. It's just getting ridiculous about how they want you to scan these stupid QR codes all the time now. I told a teenager today I used to get 10 CDs for a penny in the mail. And I'm not sure if she thinks I'm lying about what a CD was, what a penny is, or what the mail is, or all three. Some kids grow up reading stories about princes and princesses. Meanwhile, I grew up reading these. If you could have one original movie prop from an 80s movie, what would it be? The time machine from Back to the Future. Here's Chewbacca when he was in 5th grade. I think that's a pretty accurate description. I'm this old. When I first saw this, I kind of thought it was just a joke. But I actually looked this up, guys. This is real. They've brought back the Oregon Trail. I'd kind of like to play it, just to see how it compares. I bet this one is a whole lot easier than the one that we played back in the day. In the 80s, we never worried about our TV being stolen. It took 4 people just to move it a few inches to the left. Back in the day, you didn't just go up and tell someone how you felt. You spent hours making them the perfect mixtape that would explain it. If someone gave you a mixtape, you knew it just got real. How many of you guys still use music to speak to someone without ever saying a word? Either by sending them a playlist, or even just playing a specific song when they're around. Drop it in the comments. What did you call these when you were growing up? There was only one thing that I ever heard anyone call them. Roly-polies. What'd you guys call them? My 11-year-old son just discovered Tetris. Came home to him boasting about scoring 15,000 points. Cracked my knuckles and played for the first time in 25 years. Dropped 73,000 points on his head. Now he's angrily muttering to himself, and I'm doing karate kicks on the front porch. Tetris is still one of my favorite games. This brings back memories. Yeah, I slept on a waterbed one night. After that, I never wanted to sleep on one ever again. I can just see me trying to sleep on one now. I hurt bad enough as it is. Back in my day, we didn't have GPS. We ran out of gas on deserted back roads and wound up in B-movie horror films. Everyone back then carried paper maps. I still have updated paper maps because GPS won't always be here. On a side note, why are they asking the Maytag guy for directions? If you're Gen X, you remember these awesome cups. Yes, we do. I can taste this picture. I think this is true for just about all of us. Going to bed early. Not leaving my house. Not going to a party. My childhood punishments have become my adult goals. How many of you had your mother or grandmother that had one of these in their sewing kit? My grandmother and my mom both had these. As a matter of fact, my mom still has these. Today's kids will never know the struggle of having to wait for these to finish rewinding. But you didn't use your VCR to rewind them. You had your separate tape rewinder. Once it got done and popped up, you took it out of it, put it in your VCR and played it. This saved a lot of wear and tear on the VCR from just having to rewind tapes. Millennials trying to send a text without adding LOL at the end. I think this is like Gen X trying not to use ellipses, otherwise known as ... Things nobody said in the 80s and 90s. I'll just throw two up here that I'd say most of us are thinking. People who says that they're offended at everything. And also, usually those same group of people, whenever they're presented with facts and they don't have an answer, their response is always, "You're racist." We had 24-hour Walmarts and $1 McChickens. We had it all. Also had $1 double cheeseburgers. Just once, I'd like to clock out of work by sliding down a dinosaur. The problem is that younger me never thought there would be an older me. Probably in a little bit different way than most people are thinking. But yes, this is 1000% accurate. E.T. himself, Matthew Demerit. I did not know this, guys. How many of you knew this? Remember when a 5-pack of blank VHS tapes was an amazing gift? Yeah, especially the Scotch or Sony tapes. This was probably the most irrational childhood fear that I had. And a swimming pool? Maybe. However, these days, better watch out if you're in the Mississippi River, or even the Ohio and some of the other tributary rivers that go into Mississippi. Because there's more and more bull sharks in all of these rivers today. And even in some of the lakes now. because they got in there when there was flooding happening and continued to thrive. My generation never had babysitters. Our parents just told us to lock the door and don't open it for nobody. Let's settle this. The only time you should be pouring cereal into milk is when you're on the second bowl and the milk is from the first. Yes, that is true. Point of view. Visiting your grandma. My grandmother would just give you all of them. Be the person Mr. Rogers always knew you could be. Kids today have no idea that about 30 years ago, Champion was a cheap sports brand sold on the back shelves at Kmart for around $1.99 a shirt, and you got laughed at in school for wearing it. It was just a couple years ago when I realized that people thought Champion was like a mainstream brand now. Which, back in the day, they're right. It was just a cheap store brand line. Michael Knight, first man to own a smartwatch. Real ones, no. If you know what movie this is from, drop it in the comments. Sometimes I'd like to drop my kid in 1990 and see just how long they make it. Remember playing outside and not in the house? It's just about all we ever did. Danny Glover was just 41 when he decided he was getting too old for this. Let that sink in. Yeah, me too. When I was a child, all my mom had to do to shut me up was give me the look. Yep, she didn't have to say a word. We were too young to realize Slowpoke Rodriguez was always high. I never thought about that before. But they're probably right. Children of today will never know how competitive field day was. That's true, but I don't ever remember a 4th and 5th place. Me trying to be a ray of sunshine. When I accidentally select Espanol at the ATM, but still successfully complete my transaction. When you pissed off Scotty. They should have had him doing something like that in Star Trek. That'd have been hilarious. I'm so sorry, Captain. It's quite alright, Ensign. But it wasn't quite alright. Ensign Soy Gomez disappeared shortly afterward, never to be seen or heard from again. Gen Z will never understand the pain and embarrassment of a group of cowboys outing you for getting your salsa from New York City. I'm so glad I grew up when I did. Today's cartoons are terrible. That's putting it lightly in a lot of cases nowadays. What kids drink today? What we drank as kids. Now, goes back to the earlier slide. When we were kids, we laughed at the commercial. Help! I've fallen and I can't get up. I get it now. And it's not so funny. I just need people to understand that before cell phones, we had to call landlines. And your friend's parents would answer, and you had to talk to their parents until your friend came to the phone. Like they would ask you about school and your family, and sometimes hit you with a trick question that accidentally got your friend in trouble. It was a whole deal, people. No helmet, no elbow pads, no shin guards, just a boy and his bike. That's how we rolled. Terminator dirt bike, 125 cc's with a 37-speed transmission. It did seem that way. I'm usually against graffiti, but I'm sort of impressed. This isn't graffiti. This is actual art. Stuff like this is what needs to be hanging in a museum, instead of canvases that look like a 3-year-old just threw paint at it. Click on one of the videos above to help support the channel. Please hit that like button and subscribe. I thank you all for watching. This is Akorn, over and out.